Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, as yet more polling shows that the public are pretty much done with the House of Lords now, which is fine because it's Labour's policy to replace it anyway. I'd like to discuss what I think should replace it, and I think it would be in line with Starmer's aim for them anyway. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So, more in common have been polling the public about the House of Lords. The word cloud is not very complimentary. However, I am just going to point out, being fair, because most of the public don't actually know, they don't understand or follow parliamentary procedures. So the idea that an unelected chamber can elicit such sentiments, even if it were doing its job well, is not surprising. In fact, on questions like this, I think there are obviously people on both sides of the argument who will understand what the House of Lords do. But I often think that those who are answering don't know tend to be the most self-aware and honest. In fact, I bet if you were to ask the public, do we even need a second chamber? A lot would say no, which would horrify constitutional experts. You know, there was a time when I thought the House of Lords did its job well enough. I mean, you know, hereditary peers shouldn't have been a thing in modern times. They bring nothing. As for the bishops, you know, they should at the very least not have voting rights. In fact, there was a time when my view of the Lords was that, you know, you should have like two-tier membership. You know, two types of member. One would be representatives of various important aspects of our society and economy, and they would sit in the chamber and they would take part in debates, but they wouldn't vote. And then another part, which are the sort of normally appointed ones, tend to be, you know, former MPs, say, and they would do the actual voting. But the system is just utterly rotten now. It's one huge problem with the House of Lords being unelected is it allows political leaders to send people there corruptly as a reward for something. Usually it's a reward for maintaining discretion about something or other. But the Tories with David Cameron were literally selling seats. Become the party treasurer for like 18 months or so. Donate at least £3 million to the party. You get a seat in the House of Lords. All paid for by the public. Lovely jubbly. It was so blatant that I still can't believe it was allowed. Yeah, it was. Constantly. We've then had Boris Johnson sending people to the Lords who have no experience in revising legislation, which is what the job of the Lords is. So they're just there to vote the way he wanted them to. Toadies and sycophants. Oh, and an actual Putin oligarch. So the entire chamber, as far as I'm concerned now, is unreformable. Has to go. And it's Starmer's intention that it will go. And on this, he does have a bit of public support, it seems. Not overwhelming, but more people, way more people seem to support abolishing the House than oppose it. Those most in favour are Reform UK voters, which is no surprise because they are conditioned to want all British institutions abolishing, without having any idea why in many cases. Farage is the establishment figure, having, you know, just given another billionaire a senior position within his party, who pretends to be anti-establishment. The Conservatives are also predictably the most opposed because despite the behaviour of recent Tory administrations, most actual Conservatives like conserving institutions, whether they can argue for it or not. There will be resistance. In fact, the main reason why Labour didn't promise to abolish it this Parliament, I think, is because Starmer faces resistance from within his own party, not the least from Labour members of the House of Lords, for some reason, I can't think why. Answers on a postcard. But even others may not want to lose that easy way to buy off loudmouths with a seat in the Lords in return for silence. It's corruption, really. If we were going to have an unelected chamber, it needed to be at least appointed independently of politicians. But this is not going to occur. The entire system rotten to the core, so I no longer think there's anything to be done other than to abolish it, replace it with a democratically elected chamber. And we already know some of what Starmer intends. He wants it to represent all the regions of the UK. Now, this, of course, is naturally going to occur with an elected chamber because right now, no accounting is made of where the members live, and most of them live in London. Some don't even live in the UK, for goodness sake. Electing them would naturally spread them around the country, according to like population distributions, just as is the case for the House of Commons. But one argument again is the fear of a challenge to the supremacy of the House of Commons. Now, right now, the Lords don't really block legislation. Mind you, there are some in the chamber trying to block some legislation which was actually a Labour manifesto promise. Absolutely outrageous. They're really not supposed to do that. The Lords is not supposed to block manifesto promises. However, as we saw last Parliament, they won't even block controversial legislation like the Rwanda Safety Bill even when there is zero public mandate for it. But that is because they're unelected and they tend not to want to disrupt the elected house. They defer to it. But if the second chamber were elected as well, then they don't have to defer because they're also elected. Why shouldn't they block? So that prompts fears of the sort of destructive stalemates you get in America, where sometimes the budget itself is blocked. But there is a way around this. If the purpose of the second chamber is, amongst other things, is a revising chamber, just change the rules. When it's set up, when legislation passes to it from the Commons, you just set the rules up so that they have a certain period of time to come up with amendments to improve it, which they vote on, but that's it. They're not allowed to take as long as they like, so they can't hold it up. They don't vote on whether or not to pass the legislation, only for suggested amendments. So there's no way to actually block legislation. And if the Commons doesn't accept the suggested amendments, then they don't accept it, and that's the end of it. You still get a chamber to revise legislation, a bit of a check, a bit of a fail-safe, to point out where you may have made a colossal error, without having fears of a turf war between the two houses if one party dominates one and another the other. But however it's managed, it is probably worth having these discussions sooner rather than later. The Labour manifesto committed to replacing the Lords, but not this Parliament. But it did say that the discussions about how to replace it would happen before the next election. And there is a lot to discuss. You know, what exactly should it do? How do you make sure that both houses have their roles to play without blocking one another because of party political nonsense? And how are the members to be elected? Should be a good opportunity to promote a representative system of voting, not first past the post. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.